My name is Gavin Cross, and for the longest time, I believed my marriage was unbreakable, an unshakable bond forged through 15 years of love, trust, and shared memories. But that illusion shattered over something so small, so easily dismissed, yet devastating. The absence of a tan line where her wedding ring should have been. Arya, my wife, had just returned from vacation in Portugal with her sister, a trip meant to strengthen their bond, a chance to reconnect away from everyday life. She came back glowing, her skin kissed by the sun, her hair tousled by the salty ocean breeze, and our kids clinging to her like they never wanted to let go. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Too perfect, maybe. When I hugged her, I felt a strange disconnect. She smiled at me, but it was a rehearsed smile, a mask rather than a reflection of joy. Her eyes, usually warm and familiar, held a secret glimmer, something guarded and distant. I told myself I was imagining things, but deep down, a knot tightened in my stomach. That night, after the kids were asleep, Arya pulled me into our bedroom as if we were teenagers again, fresh and full of desire. She wore a bikini and joked about bringing a piece of the beach home. I laughed, wrapped my arms around her, and kissed her like I had missed her every second. Then her bikini strap slipped from her shoulder, and my eyes caught what I hadn't expected. The skin beneath was flawless, with no faint tan line where her wedding ring usually left its mark. She had never removed it before. My heart clenched, but I said nothing. I wanted to believe it was nothing. When the lights went out, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, that tiny detail gnawing at me relentlessly. Why had she taken off her ring? What had changed? In the following days, subtle signs began to unravel the life I thought I knew. Arya became secretive with her phone, clutching it like it held the world's most precious secret. She laughed softly at messages she refused to share. She muttered strange things like, "I feel so free now," as she folded laundry, her gaze distant, unreachable. One afternoon, I overheard hushed whispers between Arya and her sister about another spa weekend. But the tone was wrong, tinged with excitement, but also something darker, something that made my skin crawl. Driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth, I crossed a line I never thought I would. I installed a keylogger on our family laptop. The moment the data started flowing in, my worst fears were confirmed. I discovered a new email account in an alias I barely recognized. Sturstersteril89, locked with our daughter's middle name as the password. Inside were hundreds of messages between Arya and a man named Landon Pierce, a travel photographer she met in Portugal. What started as harmless banter about cameras and sunsets slowly morphed into intimate confessions, fantasies shared in the dark, and plans for secret rendezvous. She called him darling. They talked about moving in together. Even more heartbreaking was the role Arya's sister Celeste played. She was involved too, entangled with Landon's best friend, Miles. Their supposed vacation was a cover for a double betrayal. I felt like I was drowning, suffocated by disbelief and anger. But I didn't confront Arya immediately. I wanted more than digital proof. I wanted justice. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal as sharply as I did. I reached out to Darren, Celeste's husband, and my brother-in-law. We met quietly over coffee, and I told him straight, "I think our wives are cheating on us." At first, he laughed it off, but when he saw the look on my face, the weight of my words hit home. I showed him everything, the emails, the photos, the false weekend plans disguised as innocent spa getaways. His hands trembled as he took it all in. That night, I stared at the photo on our nightstand, a snapshot from our wedding day. Arya's eyes shone with love and promise. I thought of our vows, our daughter's first steps, every Christmas, every anniversary. Then I looked at Arya, sleeping peacefully beside me, completely unaware of the storm gathering in my heart. That's when I made my decision. Darren, and I vowed not to confront them with anger or tears. Instead, we would plan our response carefully, cold, calculated, and undeniable. We created a fake itinerary for the spa weekend, booked real hotel rooms under our control, and hired a private investigator named Simon Cray to wire the rooms with hidden cameras, track their every move, and gather indisputable evidence. We brought Arya and Celeste's father, Walter, into the plan. Years ago, He lost everything when their mother cheated. Though he said nothing as we laid it all out, the pain in his eyes spoke volumes. He wanted the truth, and this time, he wanted the cheaters to face the consequences. By Friday, everything was in place. Arya and Celeste were glowing with excitement, packed and ready. They kissed our children goodbye, like loving mothers heading off on a retreat. Arya wrapped her arms around me, whispering, "You always trust me, Gavin. That's what I love about you." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "Enjoy your weekend." As soon as they passed through airport security, I called Darren. "They're in the air," he said. "Perfect." We flew to Chicago the next day. Our cover at Tech Expo. Walter was with us, silent, staring out the window with clenched fists. At the hotel, Simon showed us live feeds from the rooms. Arya and Landon in room 603. Celeste and Miles in room 605. There they were, flirting, cuddling, sipping wine, touching each other with the reckless abandon of teenagers on their first secret date. No shame, no remorse. Walter said nothing. He just stared before slipping quietly out of the room. Darren asked where he'd gone. I told him, maybe to pray, or maybe to cry. That night, Simon handed us drives and folders bursting with proof. Photos, chat logs, burner email screenshots, GPS data. One image seared itself into my memory. Arya, slipping off her wedding ring and tossing it carelessly onto the nightstand. Walter returned late, his face hard as stone. "Tomorrow," he said simply, "we end this." The next day, while Arya and Celeste were out at brunch with their lovers, Walter went downstairs and bought 3 plush toys and a pink gift bag. I didn't understand until I saw the tags, to Mommy from Ava, to Andy from Max. They weren't gifts. They were emotional grenades, reminders of what was at stake. At 1:13 p.m., Simon texted, "Targets are back. Showtime." We gathered outside room 603. I looked at my son, Eli. "Whatever happens, stay strong." He nodded, his voice cracking with the weight of what was come. I knocked. No answer. I swiped the card. The door opened to chaos. Arya scrambled off the bed, barely wrapped in a sheet. Landon froze, shirtless, phone in hand. Behind me, Eli's voice thundered, "Mom, what are you doing?" Arya stared wide-eyed. I didn't flinch. Walter stepped in behind me, phone raised, recording every moment. Then a process server entered, handing Arya an envelope. "You've been served." Arya's voice trembled as she tried to speak. "Gavin, please, this isn't..." I cut her off sharply, my words cold and unyielding. "You threw away 15 years for a reckless beach fling with a man who doesn't even know your middle name." Landon stepped forward, ready to intervene, but Walter's sharp glare stopped him in his tracks. "You destroyed your own family," Walter said quietly but firmly, "and this is absolutely my concern." I glanced at Arya one last time, the weight of disappointment heavy in my chest. I hoped the tan was worth it, I thought bitterly. Then I turned and walked away. We left the room in silence, like mourners at a funeral. I didn't dare look back, not even when I heard her weak call my name. Not even when Eli's small hand tightened around mine, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is Mommy not coming home?" She made her choice. I murmured softly to my son. Now it's time for us to make ours. Down the dim hallway, Darren stood before room 605, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked as though it might snap. His 7-year-old daughter, Lena, clutched a stuffed giraffe in one hand and a handmade card in the other. Her eyes sparkled with innocent hope as she whispered, "We're going to surprise Mommy, right?" Darren's nod was stiff, almost mechanical. He lifted his hand and knocked firmly on the door. Celeste appeared, wrapped in a towel, her damp hair falling loosely around her shoulders. Her eyes widened in surprise at the sight before her. "You?" she called out. But Lena was already running, laughter bubbling from her lips like a sudden spring. It was meant to be a surprise. But then she saw him, Miles shirtless, seated casually on the edge of the bed. The room fell into a suffocating silence, thick enough to steal every breath. Celeste's face crumpled as if struck by a blow she couldn't defend against. "Darren, I can explain," she hurriedly stammered, desperation threading her voice. But he didn't respond. Not immediately. His gaze flicked coldly to Miles. "Get dressed," he said quietly but firmly. "If you're still here in 10 seconds, I won't be responsible for what happens." Panic overtook Miles. He scrambled, trying desperately to cover himself, hastily pulling on his clothes. Celeste stepped forward, placing herself between the two men, her voice a trembling plea. "Please." Not in front of her. But Darren snapped back with biting cruelty. "You didn't care who saw when you were moaning someone else's name." At that moment, Walter entered the room. His voice was icy, a dagger in the silence. "My granddaughter's first memory of a hotel," he said coldly, "will be of her mother's betrayal. That's the legacy you've given her. Congratulations." Celeste looked as if an invisible, lethal blow had knocked the wind from her. Then the process server stepped forward, handed her an envelope, and snapped a photo. "You've been served," he said, before disappearing like a shadow. Back in the suite, we gathered ourselves silently. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the children quietly play, completely unaware they were caught in the crossfire of a devastating emotional war. Walter stood by the window, gazing out at the Chicago skyline, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I failed them." "No," I said softly. "They failed you." He shook his head, his grief raw. "Their mother did this. She taught them loyalty is optional. Love is just leverage. I tried to fix it, but some scars run too deep, deeper than even a father's love." His voice cracked, tears streaming silently down his face. Not at her funeral, not through all the hardship, but now, for the first time, I saw Walter truly break. That was when I realized this wasn't the end. The battle had only just begun. Back in Minneapolis, I filed for emergency custody of Eli and Josie. Arya bombarded my phone. 33 calls in 3 days. I ignored them all. Her voicemail shifted from desperate crying to furious screaming to heartbroken pleading. Every message I forwarded to my lawyer. At school drop-offs, the atmosphere changed. Whispers followed me like shadows. Smiles faded, replaced by cold stares. The story had leaked, pushed into public view by an anonymous email Walter had sent. One photo attached, a tan ring line on a finger, captioned, "What a loving wife forgets while cheating." Arya's world unraveled. She was dropped from her charity board, expelled from the PDA, and ghosted by the same women who once worshipped her curated life on social media. Her Instagram, once filled with flawless family moments, went eerily silent. Then came the final blow. Walter rewrote his will. The family trust, once meant for Arya and Celeste, was reassigned solely to the grandchildren. Gavin and Darren were named trustees. When Arya found out, she stormed to my door, pounding like a woman possessed. "You told him," she screamed. "You poisoned him against me." "No," I said calmly. "You did that all on your own." Tears streaked her mascara as she trembled. "I messed up. I know that. But I love you. I never stopped." I crossed my arms. "Then tell me his middle name." She blinked, confused. "What? His middle name? The man you say you love so much. What's his middle name?" I pressed. Her face fell, stunned and exposed. "You don't know, do you?" She shook her head, breaking apart. "Then don't stand here and tell me it was love," I said, and closed the door. That night, after kids were asleep, I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair where Arya used to sit each morning. I didn't feel victorious, just free, not from the marriage, but from the illusion. 3 weeks later, Arya moved into a small rented condo across town. The air smelled of fresh paint and something colder, regret. She saw the kids every other weekend. At first, she tried pizza nights, board games, movies, but children see more than we give them credit for. Eli stopped calling her mom. He started calling her Arya. Josie once asked me softly, "Why doesn't Mommy wear a ring anymore?" I answered gently, "Sometimes grown-ups forget what matters most, but they never stop loving you." Saying that nearly broke me. At school, Eli got into his first fight. A boy taunted him with the nickname, 10-line woman son. Eli punched hard enough to split his lip. I was called to the principal's office. The principal lectured me on discipline and emotional control. When he finished, I looked at Eli and quietly asked, "If your mom destroyed your whole life over a 2-week fling, what would you punch?" Eli had no answer. He was suspended for 2 days. Instead of brooding, we went camping. Arya called during the weekend. I answered. "I won't explain," she whispered. "Explain what?" I asked. "Why you laugh with him while I was raising our children?" "I was lost," she admitted. "Invisible. I didn't go looking for it, but he made me feel wanted again, like I was more than just a mom or a wife, like I was still a woman." "You were always a woman," I told her gently. "You just stopped being a wife." She started crying, quiet, painful tears. "I hate myself. I miss our family. I wake up every day wishing I hadn't done it." I listened and said, "Arya, I forgave you the day I saw the emails. Not because you deserved it, but because I refused to let your betrayal shape who I became." After a long silence, she finally asked, "Are you seeing someone else?" "No," I said, "but when I look in the mirror now, I see someone who survived you, and that's more than enough." Meanwhile, Celeste and Darren's divorce spiraled into ugliness. Celeste refused to sign the property settlement, still clinging to the faint hope of reconciliation. Darren wasn't interested. Then he dropped a bomb, a USB drive with a screen recording of Miles, the man from the hotel, trying to extort Celeste. He wasn't a travel blogger after all. He was a scam artist, a serial seducer who preyed on married women for gifts and access. When that footage played in court, the judge didn't hesitate. Darren was granted full custody. Celeste left the state, moving in with her mother. I started journaling, trying to process everything. Over time, my entries grew from raw reflections to full chapters, finally forming a manuscript. I called it 10 Lines and Truth, How I Survived My Wife's Affair. Walter read the first draft and cried. "You turned pain into purpose," he said. The book was raw. No sugarcoating, no melodrama, just honest moments. Humiliating and human. You didn't protect Arya's image, but you didn't destroy it either. You just told the truth. Then came an unexpected twist. Landon's wife filed a lawsuit against Arya, defamation, emotional distress, professional damage. Arya had lost everything, her job, her marriage, her public life. She called me in a panic. "They're going to take everything. I don't even have a lawyer." "Sell your condo." I told her. "Then maybe you'll understand what it feels like to lose a home." I hung up, surrounded by a sea of emails, appointments, birthdays, school events. That was it. Arya emailed me again on the 15th anniversary of our wedding. I wore white. She cried when I walked down the aisle. Her hands shook. I didn't respond. I remembered how easily those hands were replaced. But life, as it always does, moved on, and so did I. One afternoon at a cafe, I met someone not romantically, just in conversation. She was a widow. Her grief was different, but familiar. "I envy you," she said softly. "Why?" "Because your pain has a villain. Mine doesn't. That makes healing harder." I thought about that for days. Maybe she was right. Maybe, in some ways, I was lucky. Time passed. Life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. I made breakfast, handled school runs, read bedtime stories. No more lies. No more masks. Just truth and healing. One morning, Walter stopped by. He looked healthier, lighter. "I'm proud of how you handled all this," he said quietly. "You broke the cycle. My daughters didn't. But you did. That means more than you know." A few weeks later, I saw Arya again, smaller, diminished, at Eli's school concert.